Screen legend Robert De Niro, at the age of 79, became a father with his girlfriend Tiffany Chen, who was 43 years old at that time. His buddy Al Pacino beat him by having a child at 83, with Noor Al-Fallah, who is more than half a century his junior.
She got a great ass!
Men are taking supplements to get bigger and breaking their legs to get taller, while women are taking fat from different parts of their bodies and injecting them into their lips and butts and inserting foreign objects into some other parts of their bodies. Oh, and Leonardo DiCaprio, until recently, refused to date a woman over the age of 25, regardless of his own age. His current girlfriend is positively long in the tooth at 26 years old. And none of this stuff is crazy. All of this seemingly bizarre behavior, while certainly extreme, has common and rational explanations, and if you understand why, you can improve your odds of finding a date, a girlfriend, or a wife. And once I'm done, all these phenomena will make perfect sense. To understand how men and women get paired up, you have to understand the dating market and crucially what currency is valued in this market. Note that I'm only speaking about unregulated dating markets. A regulated dating market is where people are not free to make their own choices, such as in societies where arranged marriages and religious pairings are the norm. So the question is, how do you get a match with someone you desire? And I'm going to explain it all using the value approach. And we're going to be looking at number 1, what men and women value, number 2, how value varies across time, number 3, how value is determined, number 4, how to maximize value, number 5, how value is distorted, and finally number 6, signaling errors and incompatible wants. And I will be speaking in broad, general terms. There's always going to be exceptions, and I will be speaking specifically about heterosexual dating dynamics. Finally, when I use the word value, I'm referring only to people's value in the dating market, and not value as people or as professionals, or value as a friend or a family member or as citizens. Fundamentally, men and women value different things. Men value physical traits the most. This should not be a controversial statement. 70 to 80% of OnlyFans creators are female, 90% of strippers are female. Beauty is a hot commodity. Demand and the market shall provide. If you look at the age preference of men for women over time, their age preference remains firmly locked in the early to mid-20s, regardless of the men's own age. It is important to note that age is a proxy for beauty here, as a man would rather prefer a fit and beautiful woman in her mid-30s than an alcoholic woman in her early 20s who smokes like a chimney and exclusively eats fast food and whose habits have left her skin melting off her face. Women are attracted to value disparity and dimorphism, or what I will refer to as the value gap, in favor of men. What do I mean? They value reliability, dominance, wealth, status, height, and other factors. The combination or mix of all of these factors is the aggregate mate value. But that is not all. Women want a man to have more wealth than they do, more status than they do, and be taller and bigger than they are. They want a positive value gap. In short, women want a man who has higher aggregate mate value than they do.
I'm looking for a man in finance, trust fund, 6'5", blue eyes, finance.
This is why women tend to prefer older men, not because they want the guy to be older, but because older men have a higher value gap.
What's the oldest guy that you would date?
Without money, 31. With money, 57.
They've had more time to grow financially and socially. This explains the phenomenon of passport bros, because the socioeconomic value gap between a man from a developed Western economy and a woman in a developing country tends to be much higher than the value gap between a Western woman and a Western man from the same developed country.
Most of Latin America is in the southern hemisphere, which means if you're considered a 6 up here, you're a 9 down there.
This becomes pretty clear when you see that the number of Western men dating locals in these developing countries is overwhelmingly larger than the number of foreign women dating locals. This also means that the higher the socioeconomic value of a woman in a developed country, the less likely she'll be able to find someone suitable, as there may not be many men above her, socioeconomically speaking. For example, a well-educated woman making $200,000 a year will probably want someone making as much, if not more, than she does, and someone with similar levels of education, thus drastically shrinking her dating pool. Furthermore, note that a man can compensate for physical shortcomings with factors such as wealth, status, and power. These same attributes in a woman will have negligible impact on her desirability in the dating market. Now, while men do value traits such as loyalty, education, sense of humor, etc., positive physical traits tend to be sufficient when assessing the potential for short-term mating and necessary for both short-term and long-term relationships. Thus, men's sorting criteria is sequential. A girl must be physically attractive, and once that requirement has been met, he will assess her other qualities. Women will assess all the criteria at once. This of course doesn't apply to dating apps where a woman has no choice but to assess sequentially, that is to say, looks first, which leaves a lot of women frustrated and is a reason dating apps do not work well for either men or women. And this tracks, because the cost of sex is higher for women, as it can result in childbirth, which, without proper medical care, comes with lots of risks. Women have to have much higher standards and more stringent criteria when it comes to mate choice. Despite relatively recent innovations in contraceptive technology, our brains are still wired to think and feel this way, and may very well take another million years to rewire. Furthermore, as a woman's fertility window is limited, time wasted in an unsuccessful relationship is of greater cost to women than it is for men. This makes perfect sense when you see men getting one match for every 15 that a woman gets on dating apps. For men, the cost is much lower, and consequently, the standards are as well. And once you understand the concept of this value gap, everything else will make sense. This is why if you look at women who are considered desirable by men, they would all largely conform to a certain standard, while women's preferences seem to be all over the place. There are many women who like conventionally good-looking people, but many also prefer dad bods, tattooed guys who look like they spent a year at a POW camp, rodent men, effeminate men, and whatever this is. This is because women place significantly less weight on specific physical traits and more on general dimorphism. That is the man taller or bigger than they are, as well as whether or not the man has greater social and economic value than they have. If you looked like Pete Davidson and you're just a regular guy, I doubt you'd have the success he has had with women. Same goes for these rodent men. One thing most people forget is that they are talking about celebrities who possess the highest social status in society and tend to be wealthy and generally also be talented. So perhaps how they actually look is incidental and may even be inconsequential. Look at this man. He looks good, right? But all a woman can deduce from this photo is that he spends a lot of time in the gym, and is certainly stronger than she is, and being alone with this person might be a risk. He could be a serial killer or an occasional killer. Even if he's not a killer, it could be worse. He could be poor. He could be a douche. He could hit it and quit it, could impregnate her and then leave her holding the baby. So yeah, this is not going to be enough. She'll need to speak to him and try to figure out what kind of person he is. So to sum up, somewhat reductively, men first start with praising physical traits, and once that bar has been cleared, they move on to praising all the other intangible traits. Women assess a man all at once, appraising him physically, economically, socially, and intellectually. So there you go. Quite simple, right? Not quite. See, value does not stay the same. It varies over time, and value for women changes differently over time than it does for men. Men and women have very different value journeys. Women start off with very high dating value, but this dating value diminishes over time. Men start off with very low dating value, but this value generally increases over time. Physical traits of men are a smaller share of what makes up aggregate mate value in the eyes of women. traits such as confidence, wealth, status, and power increase for a man over time as he advances professionally, socially, and materially, while physical value degrades over time. While women can experience a similar journey, advancing professionally and socially, but with physical value depreciating, given that physical value is much more of a priority for men, their total dating value decreases with time. Alright, now for the interesting part. How do men and women assess value? How do they tell if someone is of high value or not? How do they recognize it? As mentioned earlier, women like things like sexual dimorphism, status, resources, wealth, and dominance. But here's what makes it even more complicated for women. Since a man's value, generally speaking, does not peak until his 40s, she not only has to infer value, but she also has to pick a man who has a good probability of achieving high value in his future. Sure, a woman in her early 20s could get together with someone much older whose value has already been realized, but most women would prefer to date someone only a few years older. But a man in his 20s is far from his peak value, so a woman will need to figure out if he has a good probability of achieving high value in his future. Women have an unenviable task. What they have to do essentially is similar to stock picking, but they can only pick one stock at a time, so no diversification, and hope that the stock increases in price over time and doesn't crash. Oh, and their retirement is only 15 years away. So how does a woman assess a man's potential value? She could go up to a guy and ask him to show her his net worth statement, but socially this is not a great move. She could be accused of being a gold digger, or the relationship may become transactional from the start. So even if the guy says yes, he'll know that he's buying the girl and not developing a proper relationship. If you think a woman can simply ask a man whether or not he's a good person, think again. One of my favorite directors, David Fincher, said something that has always stuck with me. He said, "I'm not so interested in what people say. As far as I'm concerned, language was invented so people could lie to one another. It is much easier to say that you are something than to actually be that thing. Words are cheap." Now here is perhaps the most important point of this video. Women assess value and potential value indirectly. A woman must use proxies for value. Once you understand this, you'll realize that a lot of women's behavior that men find to be baffling makes perfectly logical sense. There are attributes that women can see, for example, height and looks, but a large portion of what is important is not visible. So how do women assess value? Well, current value can be assessed through conspicuous signs of consumption, conspicuous signs of wealth. Cars, homes, clothes, profession, and lifestyle, such as taking frequent and nice vacations. That's why having a well-curated social media is important to women, because that is what they look for in men's online profiles. Future value or potential value can be inferred via confidence and dominance. Confidence and dominance are not only proxies for current success, as a successful man will likely be confident and dominant, but also very strong indicators of future success. As such, confidence and dominance can be both cause and consequence of success. Finally, sexual and social value can be inferred from social proof. Does he have friends in general? Does he have female friends? Do women like him, which is an indicator of pre-selection? Is his ex-girlfriend hot? And sense of humor, which is a proxy for high social calibration and intelligence, which in turn presents potential for future success. This is also a reason why women find guys who are engaged very desirable, as they have already cleared the high standards set by other women, and is a cheat code they can use to figure out if a man is good or not without doing a lot of the legwork. Notice how none of what I mentioned so far involves language, and that is because the mechanisms of attraction were present long before language evolved and has barely changed since. So women have to deal with all of this, but if a woman doesn't have access to information about a man's lifestyle, doesn't know anything about his ex, and perhaps the guy is alone and not with his friends or in the presence of any women, what can she actually rely on? Assuming creepily stalking him is not an option, well, she can rely on height, looks, dominance, his posture, his voice, how he speaks, and this is vital, nonchalance and indifference. Wait, what? Once you understand what I'm going to say, it will unlock any mystery you have about nice guys and bad boys. Recall that women want a man with higher aggregate mate value than herself. So what is the quickest way a woman can determine if a man has higher aggregate mate value than she does? A man who is always at the beck and call of a woman will fail to generate any attraction, as she will be intuitively aware that she has higher aggregate mate value than he does.
What's the worst thing a guy can do?
I guess be nice.
Be nice.
Because sometimes if you're too nice, it gives like, oh, it's like the ick.
Really?
You know? Because it's like, why are you so nice? If a guy is nice, that means he gets no girls, and that's like a turn off, you know what I mean?
If a man doesn't pay much attention to a woman, that woman can conclude that he has experienced better women or has better options, which must mean he has higher mate value. That's it. This is a cognitive shortcut that lies at the core of what makes a woman attracted or not attracted to a man. Nonchalance does not mean ignoring a girl. It means being able to engage with a woman, stimulate her intellect and desire, but not be overly fixated on any outcome. Imagine that you are average looking, but had $1 billion. You have traveled widely, partaken in a lot of beautiful women. Beautiful women are always around you. If your car broke down, you could buy another one in cash. Got a parking ticket? It would be meaningless. If your house burned down, you could just buy another one in cash or fly to any one of your many homes around the world. You'd be comfortable with going to any restaurant and ordering anything without worrying about the final bill. This attitude would be hard to fake and would be very apparent from your behavior. You'd always be calm and relaxed. And now assume you see a beautiful woman. To you, this woman would be a dime a dozen. It wouldn't matter if you couldn't date her. And that attitude would be very evident to her. She'd sense your nonchalance. You'd be very comfortable speaking to her, being near her, and you wouldn't care if your interaction was cut short, because there are just so many women available to you. Conversely, if you have very little control over your life and are perpetually flirting with financial ruin, you'd be acting like Woody Allen on crack. If you rarely meet hot women, rarely if ever speak to one, and then one day a pretty girl comes along and gives you attention, you would do anything to be near her. You'd want to keep that interaction going. You'd want to do things for her. You'd do her homework, perhaps drive her places and buy her dinner, just to continue to be around her. Because you have so little value, you'd want to create as much value as you could for her. You'd worry if you should kiss her, or if she's going to reject you, or if you said the right thing or the wrong thing, or if you're dressed well, or if she thinks your car is crap. And this desperation and neediness would become evident to the girl, and she would conclude that you have been pre-rejected by society. This is why it's generally very hard to recover from the friend zone. I'm not saying that men and women cannot be friends. They can if the feeling of friendship is mutual. But when a guy likes a girl, but the girl has placed him in the friend zone, you must understand that she has already judged his value to be lower than hers. Now that is a negative value gap. The proper way to recover from the friend zone would be to detach, stop providing value, politely deprive the woman of your company, reduce in-person and electronic interaction to almost zero, and start dating women who are as hot or hotter than she is. Then you must be both wealthier than she is and display that wealth via social media, and only then do you have a chance to recover. There is no guarantee, but at least the process of getting out of the friend zone might make you a better man. The classic bad boy is attractive because he has confidence and dominance, likely has a large body count, and shows an appropriate level of nonchalance, all of which demonstrate relative higher value. Note that women have a tough job. Not all bad boys tend to do well in life. Traits such as dominance and confidence, if present in excess and not tempered by humility, can lead these men to do poorly in life. It's worth taking some time to talk about signaling here. If men are hardwired for promiscuity, how can the woman get a signal of commitment? Well, she can ask the man to commit resources to her, which he would not be able to sustain with several women at once, as it would get expensive very quickly. This is why women, regardless of how strong or independent they are, generally speaking, want men to pay for dates. It shows that the man is using up his resources on her and would not be able to do this with several women. Similarly, a man must present a woman with an expensive ring worth around 10% to 25% of his gross annual income, as a signal to a woman that he wants exclusivity and long-term commitment. Clearly, this is not something he'd be able to do with several women. Note once again that no language is necessary. Now, if you're enjoying this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. I'm really interested to know what you think. Thank you, and let's move on. Now, let's briefly talk about how men assess value. Men assess value sequentially. Looks first, and then other factors, such as loyalty, intelligence, kindness, etc. Because the cost for men is lower, both in terms of health consequences and in terms of time. We can get both specific and general on looks, and nothing that I'm going to say is going to be mind-blowing. Full lips, nice hair, good skin, and a good waist-to-hip ratio, the last of which might entail having a good body mass index, are physical factors that will be considered. If a woman fails this first hurdle, it is highly improbable that she can compensate for it with other non-physical traits. Once a woman passes this hurdle, she's suitable for short-term mating. Then starts the evaluation for long-term potential, traits such as emotional and social calibration, kindness, loyalty, sense of humor, sound of her voice, and anything else from a long list of other traits. Now that we've covered what is valued and how men and women assess value, you might be wondering, how do I maximize this value? There are two parts to value maximization. The first is to build value. The second is to effectively communicate or signal value. Building value for men might mean advancing professionally and financially, growing your net worth and your intellect, increasing your stature in your community, or becoming an expert in your domain or mastering a skill. It might also involve working out to maximize physical attributes. As you build value, you'll want to communicate this as a way of attracting mates. If you are insanely wealthy but dress like a peasant, then you're not communicating that you are wealthy, which may be a smart way of keeping away the gold diggers. The same goes for cars. Now, you may be tempted to hack this. It is easy to buy expensive clothes on credit, finance an expensive car, and rent an expensive home. But you'll never feel secure. You'll be living paycheck to paycheck in a constant state of financial precarity. And you know what traits you won't be able to mimic when you are constantly worried and on the precipice of fiscal ruin? Nonchalance and indifference. In a similar manner, a woman can work out and stay in shape or improve her physique, but assuming she wants a long-term partner, she would not be communicating her proper dating value if she dresses like this or like this. We should also talk about how not to maximize value. For men, focusing on maximizing physical traits may not be the best course of action, especially if this occurs at the cost of developing other, more valuable traits. This is due to physical traits having a lower weight for women, and because physical assets depreciate over time. Now, I'm not saying that a man should not strive to be well-dressed, well-groomed, and physically fit, but know that excessive time spent in the gym will leave less time to build wealth and develop professionally and intellectually. Your goal should be to create a value gap that is as large as possible relative to the average woman or relative to the type of woman that you want to be with. Similarly for women, and this is going to sound controversial, focusing on a career and building wealth is all well and good, but if having children is a priority, then sacrificing one's childbearing years to do so might lead to unhappiness and regret. Know that if your goal is to have a family and be a mother and have children of your own, your 20s will be the ideal time to find a man who shares these goals. In summary, be mindful of what you communicate because that will determine whom you attract, and be cognizant of your value peak and use that accordingly. And all of this is made even more complicated by the media, which distorts values and even desires. I want to quickly talk about value distortion here. Note that the media distorts desires. Bombarding us constantly with perfectly toned bodies and ageless icons can make us feel like this is the norm, and any person not living up to this ideal is falling far short. The media can even make us idolize the wrong people.
I think American Psycho is very good, actually. You know, it shows this guy who's in banking and he's really clearly a dickhead. But I knew people at LSE that would memorise all of his lines by heart. And they loved him. And the reason is because he's really handsome, he's really rich, he's in great shape, he's got a really beautiful girlfriend, he's got a really expensive flat.
Dating apps also distort the selection process by forcing women to select based on a very narrow set of criteria and amplifying the disparity in standards between men and women. This leaves the top men getting most of the women while most average men get nothing. But this isn't good for women either, as the top men are sleeping with multiple women for little to no cost and effort, while most women may be looking for monogamy and exclusivity. So neither most men nor most women end up getting what they want. This is further compounded by signaling errors and incompatible wants. What do I mean? When a man emulates what a successful man looks like by taking his cues from the media, he may attract the wrong type of women. Another example is that men might see beautiful women giggling and laughing more when a rich man makes a joke, so they might think the best way to improve their sense of humor is to buy a Lambo. Shining brightly might attract moths when all you really want are some butterflies. Women do not have perfect selection criteria either. They are often led astray by the wrong signals. Bad boys can short-circuit a woman's selection process, for example. What they are really attracted to are nonchalance, confidence, dominance, and other such traits. Unfortunately for them, oftentimes these traits tend to exist alongside less desirable ones, such as unreliability, imprudence, and inconsistency. And to the 5 women watching, I know a lot of you want guys who are spontaneous, but you know what spontaneous men don't do? They don't save for retirement or put money aside for their children's college. I've also seen women who want men who are successful but also very emotionally available. There's a high likelihood that the man became successful by being very single-minded in his pursuits, whether that's building a business or working hard and advancing professionally, and this is not likely to change because he gets together with a woman. Similarly, when a man wants a fun woman who parties hard and is easy, remember that she'd extend that convenience to other guys as well. Certain traits, although not always, tend to be incompatible. Wild might mean unreliable. Intelligence might not come with a sense of abandon. Beauty might bring with it a sense of insecurity. Ambition might bring with it less availability, both emotional and physical. So I've covered a lot in this video, but it's impossible to be completely exhaustive. So let me know what I missed, what you agree with, and what you disagree with. I really want to hear from you. But most importantly, I want to leave you with this. There are real people out there outside of this world of algorithms and online ratings. They are three-dimensional. And if you make the effort to meet such people, and it's not nearly as easy as it is doing it online, but if you maximize your value and communicate your value and make the effort, you will increase the probability of finding someone you desire. And outside of all these civilization in decline headlines, there are real people falling in love with other real people for real reasons. A lot of the rage bait you see occurs in the extreme ends of the dating market, and I do not want to dismiss the valid concerns, but being overly fixated on this will not do anyone any favors. Real women are not out there on Instagram trying to get resources, and real guys who want to get married probably shouldn't be on social media looking for women. The media is a distortion field, so do your best to come out into the real world as much as possible. You'll be better off. Thanks for watching.